Balazs, we are having trouble with your audio.
Oh, coming through now?
Yes.
Apologies. Wow. Okay. This meeting is now being recorded. Good evening and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for State Project 0171-0478. This project will discuss the proposed installation of Centerline Rumble Strips on eligible roadways throughout Connecticut that will be repaved in 2022. Tonight, we will be presenting on the need for Centerline Rumble Strips in Stafford on Route 190, which is West Stafford Road, as well as Route 319, which is Orcuttville Road, as well as highlighting the safety benefits that come with the installation. My name is Balazs, and I'm the project engineer at the Connecticut Department of Transportation for this project. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. We hope our presentation will be informative, and we hope to answer your questions and concerns during tonight's live question and answer session. By the end of tonight's meeting, we hope you will have a better understanding of the importance and benefit of installing Centerline Rumble Strips in Stafford. If you are viewing this presentation in Microsoft Teams, you have the option to view captions or subtitles for this presentation. To turn on this feature, select the CC button at the bottom right corner of your screen to turn on the caption. .gov/DOT Stafford 171-478. The comment period will be open for 2 weeks, so July 28th, via either the email or telephone shown on the screen. The Microsoft Teams chat function will only be available during tonight's live event Q&A. We would also greatly appreciate it if you could fill out a very brief feedback survey, which can be found at the bottom of the project webpage. Again, portal.ct.gov/DOT Stafford 171-478. The virtual public information meetings are a necessary development for the department during these times, and the survey will help the department improve these public meetings going forward. There is also a civil rights flyer that's available. The website for that is portal.ct.gov/business/contract-compliance/civil-rights-and-accessibility. Finally, I would like to reinforce that no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. I would now like to introduce those from the department who are participating in this meeting. Natasha Fatu is the state safety engineer for the state of Connecticut, the head of the safety engineering unit in the department's division of traffic engineering, and is the project manager for this project. Once again, I'm Balazs, an engineer in the safety engineering unit, the lead engineer for this project, and primary presenter for tonight's meeting. I will also be answering the questions you may have during the live Q&A session. Yilu is also an engineer with the Safety Engineering Unit and presenter for tonight's meeting. She will be reading off any questions. Actually, I think Natasha might be reading off the questions. Apologies for that. They're coming during the presentation and the live Q&A, so I can answer them for you. And Steve Bruno and Rob Smith are also engineers with the Safety Engineering Unit and will be monitoring the team's chat, project email address, call and voicemail for any questions or comments that come in during the live Q&A session. So let's go through the agenda. Tonight we will go through the Centerline Rumble Strip eligibility requirements, then the project description and purpose of the project, as well as objectives that we hope to achieve. Then we will go give a thorough description of what Centerline Rumble Strips are and why they are the best countermeasure for this roadway segment, or these roadway segments instead. Next, I will discuss the installation process of how they're actually put in. And lastly, we will go over the cost and estimate and timeline for this project before we wrap everything up with the live event Q&A discussion. So let's talk about the criteria for Centerline Rumble Strip eligibility. The department goes through a screening process to determine Centerline Rumble Strip eligibility, including taking a look at the traffic volume, making sure that the average daily traffic on the road is at least 2,000 vehicles per day, ensuring that the pavement is in good condition and less than 3 years old. The roadway has to have a minimum of 14 feet of width from the center line to the edge of the pavement. The reason for that is that this helps make sure that there's plenty of room for drivers to maneuver in their lane without accidentally going over the Centerline Rumble Strips. The roadway also has to have a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or greater. And lastly, there has to be a low residential density. If there are some homes along the segment, we try to ensure that the majority of them are at least 100 feet away from the edge of the road. So this is the project description for the Route 190 segment. So we will be repaving Route 190 West Stafford Road from Route 30, which is Crystal Lake Road, to Route 32, which is Monson Road, during the 2022 construction season. The following sections of Route 190, which combined for a length of 0.93 miles, were identified as being candidates for the installation of Centerline Rumble Strips based on the criteria that were just mentioned. So from 0.16 miles east of Susan Drive to 0.10 miles east of Middle River Drive. That's the segment shown to the west where it says proposed Centerline Rumble Strips. And then the second segment is from 0.15 miles east of Middle River Drive to Route 32, which is Monson Road. The section shown to the west, near West Stafford, meets the installation requirements, but is more residentially dense than the area that is currently being proposed for the installation, which is why we decided not to include it as part of the project. So as mentioned in the last slide, Centerline Rumble Strips are proposed on the sections shown in green on Route 190 during the 2022 construction season, so later this year. As you can see, the sections where the Centerline Rumble Strips are proposed are areas where the residential density is sparse, which is one of the primary considerations when we're looking at these segments. Please note that the majority of homes are more than 100 feet from the roadway, with only a handful of exceptions. The department is proposing to install these sections, as I mentioned, as opposed to one long segment, in order to minimize the impact to homeowners in the area. And the majority of the buildings shown in the aerial image to the west, well, I'm sorry, just the aerial image where it's highlighted in green, are businesses. And so this is the project description for the second segment, which is Route 319. So we will also be repaving Route 319, which is Orcuttville Road, from Route 32, Monson Road, to Route 19 East Street. And this section is just a little bit north of the Route 190 segment during this construction season. This 0.4 mile section of Route 319, out of the entire little over 1.5 miles from Fox Hill Drive to 0.40 miles east of Fox Hill Drive, was identified as being a candidate for the installation. The section from Route 32 to Fox Hill Drive is also eligible, but is more densely populated than the proposed area. So again, we did not include it in the project for that reason. The section to the east of the proposed area, east of where it says proposed Centerline Rumble Strips, or CLRS, did not meet the eligibility criteria, so it was not included for that reason. So again, as just mentioned, the Centerline Rumble Strips are proposed on the section shown in green during this construction season. As you can see, the sections where it is being proposed is an area where the residential density is sparse, which is why the area to the west, the rest of the purple to the west or the left side, is not being included. Again, please note that most of the homes in this segment are more than 100 feet away from the roadway, with only a handful of exceptions. So what are Centerline Rumble Strips, right? They are grooves within the double yellow centerline that produce noise and vibration when the tires of a vehicle come into contact with them. The noise and the vibration alerts the driver that they have departed from their lane, and it gives the driver an opportunity to recover. Centerline Rumble Strips are different than the grooves along the edges of the interstate highways like I-91, 95. These grooves are on secondary roads, such as these ones, are not as deep and therefore produce much less noise. More importantly, they only produce noise when they are struck, such as when a vehicle is veering out of its lane and possibly into oncoming traffic. So now let's talk about why Centerline Rumble Strips. So again, they make an audible and vibratory warning, and this greatly improves the chances that a driver will quickly and safely recover and return to their lane. Centerline Rumble Strips also have the additional benefit of helping drivers navigate during poor weather conditions, such as during fog, snow, rain, or just in general when pavement markings are obscured. The Federal Highway Administration has identified these as a proven safety countermeasure to address head-on and sideswipe opposite direction crashes. So, as I mentioned just now, they are an example of a proven safety countermeasure according to FHWA, or the Federal Highway Administration, along with some of these other countermeasures shown on the slide. Additional information on these can be found by Googling proven safety countermeasures, and should be the first link that pops up. The department's Safety Engineering Unit also has an informational website which provides additional information that is specific to Connecticut. So in 2021, let's talk about the crashes. There were 36 fatalities and 2,675 injuries and 36 fatalities from head-on and opposite direction sideswipe crashes on Connecticut non-freeway roadways. These Centerline Rumble Strips help reduce the type of crashes, so hopefully lowering these numbers, which could be attributed primarily to distracted or fatigued driving. Over 30% of the people injured in these crashes associated with vehicles crossing the center line were under the age of 25, so it's relatively the younger population, and it is disproportionately affecting the younger drivers. It is also worth noting that Connecticut is experiencing a 57% decrease in fatal and severe injury crashes since we have started installing Centerline Rumble Strips. So, looking at motor vehicle crashes on the segment, we'll start with Route 190 in Stafford. Typically, we look at the latest 3 years of data for crashes. So from 2019 to 2021, there were 60 total reported crashes on the segment. 5 of these involved a vehicle crossing over the center line into the opposite lane, with 3 of them hitting a fixed object and 2 of them hitting other vehicles. As for Route 319, for the same 3-year period, there were 15 reported crashes, with 2 of them involving a vehicle crossing over the center line into the opposite lane. So in total, there were 7 crashes that may have been prevented by the installation of these Centerline Rumble Strips. And I just want to stress that the point of these is to reduce the possibility of these types of severe crashes from happening in the first place. It's also important to note that near misses are not recorded, so there may be instances where a driver veers into the opposite lane, but then corrects themselves quickly, and so there is no information about them, right? The police don't record that because it didn't actually happen, but it was a close call. So Centerline Rumble Strips are highly effective. They are, like I said, a low cost, and this is the important part, it's a proactive treatment. So trying to prevent any crash from happening before it actually happens, intended to reduce the lane departure crashes and keep these crashes from happening. And then based on national data, fatal and injury head-on and sideswipe crashes, which are, like I said, the 2 main crashes that we are trying to prevent with these, specifically in rural areas, were reduced by an average of 44% after the Centerline Rumble Strips were installed. And this value is based on a report by the Transportation Research Board. And additionally, per the infograph at the bottom of the slide, based on a study by the Michigan Department of Transportation, Centerline Rumble Strips can reduce head-on crashes by as much as 50%, run-off-the-road crashes by 46%, fatal crashes by 51%, and serious injury crashes by 41%. So let's talk now about the use of Centerline Rumble Strips. There are approximately 43 states across the country that use them, including all of the states up here in the Northeast U.S. Connecticut has started installing these Centerline Rumble Strips in 2014, and the shoulder line rumble strips that I mentioned earlier on limited access highways since 1994. Those are the, like I said, the louder, deeper ones on like I-91, for example. As of January of this year, Connecticut has installed over 385 miles of Centerline Rumble Strips on state roadways, and over 90 miles on local roads, with more being proposed every year as the roadways are being repaved. Like I said, one of the factors that we have to take into account is the age of the roadway. So it makes sense for us to kind of do it in conjunction with these projects when we're repaving it, because then we'll know that the pavement is new enough to not have any negative consequences as a result of us installing the Centerline Rumble Strips. And then lastly for this slide, there's a link to a video titled Rumble Strips, the Sweet Sound of Safety. I'm not going to play it, but this is a short YouTube video uploaded by the Federal Highway Administration and will be available once the presentation is posted online. It can also be found on YouTube by typing in the underlined keywords. Again, Rumble Strips, the Sweet Sound of Safety. So here is a Connecticut map. So as you can see on the map, the majority of towns in Connecticut, right now we have over 130 out of 169 total towns, municipalities, have had Centerline Rumble Strips installed. Any town shown in green already has them installed, whether it's on a town or state-owned roadway. Towns in blue are programmed to have them installed within the next year or two, and then towns shown in white do not currently have them installed. But as I mentioned, this will likely change in the future as additional roads are being repaved. Also note that most of Stafford already has about 5 miles of existing Centerline Rumble Strips on Route 32 from Route 190 to the Mass state line, and Stafford's neighboring towns also all have Centerline Rumble Strips installed. As far as the construction of Centerline Rumble Strips and the cost, the average cost of installing Centerline Rumble Strips is a little more than $2 per linear foot. On top of that, the double yellow centerline paint is added, which is about $1.25 per foot. And so bringing the cost of implementing the rumble strips to approximately $25,000 for the little over 1.3 mile segment that we're talking about, or segments, I guess, combined. The cost will be covered by 100% state funds, so there's no cost to the town, with the repaving anticipated to take place during this year's construction season, probably later in the fall. And then these are just a couple of pictures taken from construction showing part of the milling and grooving process. The construction vehicles travel and work at approximately 2 to 3 miles per hour to install these Centerline rumble strips, and the work is done during non-rush hours, so it doesn't really impact traffic, and then the centerlines are painted a few days later. So that's the presentation. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for your time to listen to me talk about the Centerline Rumble Strips, and now it's time to hear from you in the live Q&A and question and answer session. Remember that you may email us any questions or comments via the project email address, which is shown here. Leave a voicemail message on the call-in phone line, or send your questions directly via Teams chat, as I mentioned. We also want to encourage that you take our very brief feedback survey to help us improve how we deliver these virtual public information meetings going forward. So with that being said, Natasha, are there any questions from the email, voicemail, or the chat for us to answer?
Thank you, Balazs, for that great presentation. We do have a question. The first question came in via email. How will these rumble strips affect the stability of two-wheeled vehicles, motorcycles, crossing over them in fair or inclement rainy or snow weather? Will these strips hold ice or be icy in the wintertime? Thank you. And this question comes from HB Hatch.
Okay. Thank you, HB, for that question. So first of all, I guess I ride a motorcycle, so I understand the concern with regards to, throwing in the Centerline rumble strips and how it will affect you as a rider. So in general, they have not been found to cause any stability concerns for motorcyclists or other three-wheeled vehicles. Most of the time, it ends up being a rider or driver behavior that becomes a central factor in crashes. And involving motorcyclists, even on roads with Centerline rumble strips installed. Actually, the Federal Highway Administration has allowed Centerline rumble strips to be installed in areas with existing passing zones. So, it is something that they are cognizant of, but have also kind of encouraged, for all the states. And then, additionally, just so everyone's aware, there are brakes in the Centerline rumble strips at intersections with town roads. So, if you are making a maneuver, turning, into a town road, whatever, and you're crossing the center line, there are brakes in the center lines for that. And then I guess the second question was, will these strips hold ice or be icy? So generally, no. The vehicles passing by tend to push the water out of the rumble strips. Like I said, they're really not that deep, especially if, you're thinking of the ones on highways that are, real deep, real loud. These are, like I said, much shallower, and as a result of that, any water that may accumulate in there from rain or whatever will generally be pushed out just by vehicles passing by. It gets forced out just from the wind pressure. So I hopefully that answers your question.
I'd like to remind those on YouTube or anyone who called in how they can ask questions. For those on YouTube, this information can be found under the video. You just need to click See More, and the email address should be there for you to copy and paste. It is not a hyperlink, so you will need to copy and paste. For those in the chat, you can post your question in the Teams live event chat, where you have the option to ask a question anonymously. For everyone else, please contact us by email at dotproject171-478stafford@ct.gov, or by phone at 860-944-1111, where you can leave a message with your question. We do have another question here. The 40-mile-per-hour speed limit posted just west of the Big Y leads to drivers accelerating toward the Route 190, Route 319 roundabout. Shouldn't this speed limit be reduced to improve safety? And this comes from a resident west of Big Y.
Okay. Thank you for that question also. So I guess I understand the concern. The primary purpose of this project tonight is just to talk about this project, the Centerline Rumble Strips, primarily. If there are any concerns about, vehicle speeding, the local traffic authority does have the power to reach out to the Office of the State Traffic Administration. They are the ones that put up speed limits and determine what the appropriate speed limit is based on, surrounding factors, businesses nearby, how many driveways there are, things like that. So if there is a request to, lower the speed limit in an area, that would be done through that process. But we weren't really going to touch too much on it tonight. But like I said, there is a way to do it. It's just that wasn't the primary purpose of what we were looking at tonight.
It looks like we have another question from Anonymous. It may have been answered, but we will ask it here just to ensure. Does ice build up in the grooves during winter? If so, does that create a safety concern?
Thank you for that question. So, I guess theoretically, yes, it could build up. Like I said, when it's still wet water, different form, it does get pushed out by cars passing by. So I guess the instance where that wouldn't be the case is if you didn't have anyone driving by for, a good long while. But, it's not really an issue that we have really come across in the past. Like I said, we have almost 400 miles on state roads and almost 100 on local roads. And I don't believe that we have gotten a complaint about that being an issue in the past. Like I said, I think the water for the most part does get pushed out of them. And then, if the ice, I guess, does accumulate, the only time that the driver would be going over the icy part would be for a very, very brief period, which really shouldn't, cause enough of an issue that it would turn into a crash or anything like that, because, you're only going over the center line if there's an error in driving, right? So the rest of the time you'd be staying in the lane and it wouldn't really be an issue at all. So hopefully that answers that.
I'd just like to add a little to that too. We would like to reiterate that we haven't experienced much ice buildup in the Centerline Rumble Strips, but also wanted to point out that we do salt treatment. During the winter time, if there's snow on the ground or ice, you see the DOT trucks or the contractors plowing the road. We do also do salt treatments, which helps to melt that ice. So that is not a concern for us. We have another question here from Mandy. Can you reiterate, are the green highlighted sections on the maps the only areas that will have the rumble strips installed for this project?
Was that Mandy? Hi, Mandy. Yes, thank you for your question. Yeah, so just these sections shown in green. So for Route 190, like I said, I believe it's 0.9 miles or maybe a little bit over 0.9 miles. If you could see my mouse pointer, this whole section from Route 30 over here, past Route 319 up here to this point, that's not getting any Centerline Rumble Strips. This segment over here is, and then there's a little bit of break because again, there's a few homes there. And then this segment also leading up to Route 32 is proposed to have it installed. And then for Route 319, this section over here by Route 32, this segment is not getting it, but then this short segment is. And then the segment to the east of that is also not getting it. So yes, just the segments in green.
Another question here from Anonymous. Is the visibility of the yellow lines compromised when the grooves are present?
So no, I guess the short answer is no. In fact, what typically happens is because they are recessed and the paint is put into the recess itself, as a driver, when you're approaching it, you still see the the upper portion of the recess as you're driving. And so what actually happens is, visibility is not compromised, number one, but number two, the pavement markings actually tend to last a little bit longer, only because, if you do have drivers going on the center lines and not having the vibration, they will tend to stay on the center line, unless there's, some kind of corrective action that they take. But because this actively puts them into a position where they should take a corrective action, this actually makes the pavement marking last longer. So it doesn't have to get repainted as often.
We have another question here from Anonymous. Is the durability of pavement compromised by cutting grooves into the surface?
Thank you for that question. So, no, in short, no. And so that's partially why we are doing this project now. Like I said, when we are restriping the roadway, when the roadway is repaving the roadway as well as restriping it, I guess. But when we're repaving the roadway, we know exactly how well or how good the pavement condition is. And one of the things that we look for is the pavement age has to, well, first of all, the pavement condition in general has to be good when it's being repaved, such as, under one of these projects. That's the case, right? It's brand new pavement, it's in good condition. If we were to do a segment that wasn't involved in a project such as this one, it would have to be, again, in good condition and less than 3 years old. But because it's being done at the same time as the paving, while the pavement is still fresh, again, we haven't had any experiences where the pavement starts cracking, in a negative way or anything like that as a result of these being put in.
We have a question that came in via email from Lynn Fontaine. We have many people who ride bicycles and walk on the road to and from the high school. This being said, the vehicles will be constantly crossing the line. We need sidewalks before rumble strips.
Thank you for that question/statement, Lynn. Let me just get a good read on it. So bicycles and the high school, got it. So I guess I understand that. Like I said, the road is being repaved. One of the things that's being done as part of the repaving project is the new universal design standard across the state, just so it's the same everywhere as roads get repaved, is that we try to give as much to the shoulder as possible. So off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly what the existing shoulder width is, but after the road gets repaved, whether or not the rumble strips, I mean that's separate from it, the striping of the actual lanes. The lanes will generally be 11 feet wide. In the past, they were a little bit wider, so you had less shoulder space. But now what we're doing is, like I said, we're kind of we're shortening up the lane width itself to 11 feet, and so. Like I said, one of the things that we look for, again, is it has to be at least 14 feet wide from the center line to the edge of the road. So, that automatically gives you at least 3 feet of shoulder space for, bicyclists or whoever else may be using the shoulder. Natasha, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as far as sidewalks go, the department doesn't typically install sidewalks. That usually is the responsibility of the town.
So yes, the sidewalks are outside the scope of this particular project. This is primarily a paving project. Sidewalks can be installed through the town. So I would encourage you to reach out to your town, your local officials, and start requesting for sidewalks or how you may be able to pursue sidewalks. But again, the sidewalk is outside of the scope of this paving project. So we have another question here from Anonymous. When are rumble strips beyond the shoulder strip used? Would they be warranted on these stretches of road to keep drivers within the lanes?
Thank you for that question. That's a good question. So again, we're talking primarily about Centerline Rumble Strips. It's not necessarily good that this resident is concerned about people staying in the lanes, but I mean that's really the main goal of this, right? So this kind of serves as a not necessarily proof that drivers may be kind of swerving out of their lanes, but that's partially the reason why we're doing this. But so I guess on this these sections of roads, neither really would qualify for the shoulder rumble strips. I think we primarily.
I can jump in a little here, Balazs. So far in Connecticut, we have really kind of contained our shoulder line rumble strips to the interstates or limited access highways. We're really focusing right now on Centerline Rumble Strips. We want to work with our bike and ped communities before we begin to pursue implementing shoulder line rumble strips on more secondary roadways. We do have some on limited access highways that sometimes look like a secondary roadway, but they are only installed right now on what is qualified as a limited access highway. So Connecticut is not installing shoulder line rumble strips on our secondary roadways at this time. We have a call here, a question here via phone from Art Gary. He's concerned about the impact of sound on residents and animals along the roadway. Is there going to be an increase in sound for vehicles turning left over the rumble strips onto commercial driveways? He is also concerned about speeding.
Okay. Art, thank you for that question. So yes, noise is a valid concern. Like I said, most of the sections that we are proposing to install this has been vetted for homes in the vicinity, and we are actively trying to avoid them at all costs. Having said that, obviously, in order for this to be a continuous segment, there will be a couple of homes along the segment where the Centerline rumble strips are being installed. However, I guess it's important to keep in mind, right, that the noise is only going to happen if the people are driving over the center line. So that means that they're crossing over the center line, and that means that they now need to make, take corrective action, get back into their lane, so that any vehicles coming in the opposite direction don't accidentally, they don't hit each other. And then, as I mentioned, so we only had 5 crashes on Route 190 that are attributed to, being correctable by Centerline rumble strips, and 2 on Route 319 in the past 3 years. We have no way of knowing, like I mentioned, how many close calls there were, how many near misses there were. And then anytime a driver or, a resident may hear the noise, it reinforces the fact that the people driving within the area are not staying in their lane. Like I said, we looked at the residential density and took that into account. But, in the grand scheme of things, like I said, we've had a bunch of these installed, and we really don't hear many complaints about the noise, primarily because, once they're put in, people do tend to stay within their lane, which is, one of the things that we're trying to do as part of this. And then as far as the speeding that I'm seeing, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit, but, so the process to do that is through going through the Office of the State Traffic Administration. The local traffic authority would reach out to them. But at the end of the day, we can put up a speed limit sign for whatever, 25 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, but we can't really enforce it. It really doesn't, we don't have the power to enforce it. We just have the power to put it out there. So really, if speeding is an issue, usually we would refer that to the enforcement within the area, Stafford Police, whoever would typically, go on those roadways to make sure people aren't speeding.
I did want to touch on your question, or your second part about turning left over the rumble strips onto commercial driveways. That's okay. So we, as you're turning left, motorists tend to slow down, to make that maneuver to turn left. We haven't found a significant increase in the sound for vehicles turning left. But with that in mind, any major traffic generator that has a signal or any town intersection, we are not installing the Centerline rumble strips. So there will be a break in the Centerline rumble strips for those town road intersections, as well as any signalized or major traffic generator driveway. And I just want to reiterate with respect to the speeding, want to just kind of say the same, mention again, the Centerline Rumble Strips are going to hopefully to help keep those distracted drivers, those fatigued drivers out of the crossing the roadway into oncoming traffic. Speeding is really an enforcement issue. And we really encourage you to reach out to your local officials and your police department, to have more enforcement in the area. Okay, we have another question here from via phone. A resident on the Route 190 section is concerned about noise that would be produced by running over rumble strips every time a car on the left would be passing around right turning vehicles entering private driveways. So again, I can answer that one. That may happen. But because the vehicles are slowing down to make that maneuver across the rumble strip, it actually we haven't found a significant concern with noise increase for that maneuver.
I would also add to that it almost, not the primary purpose of it, but it almost acts as a deterrent for people to pass, a car turning into a driveway and just fly by them, for what it's worth. Yeah.
So again, I want to just remind for those on YouTube or anyone who called in how they can ask a question. For those on YouTube, the information can be found under the video. You need to click See More, and the email address should be there for you to copy and paste. It is not our hyperlink, so you will need to copy and paste. For those in chat, you can post your question in the Teams live event chat where you have the option to ask a question anonymously. And for everyone else, please contact us by email at dotproject171-478stafford@ct.gov or by phone at 860-944-1111 where you can leave a message with your question. I do want to remind and encourage everyone to participate in the brief survey at the link displayed on the screen on YouTube and is also located at the bottom of the project webpage. See if we have any more questions.
I guess also one more thing real quick is that the comment period is open for 2 more weeks. So if someone doesn't get a chance to see this, it will be recorded, put on this website. People can follow up with either email or voicemail questions for the next 2 weeks, just to, before the project period ends, or the comment period rather.
I do want to remind everyone that for general information about the project, they can visit the project webpage. It's portal.ct.gov/DOT Stafford 171-478.
Looks like we got a question in.
Yes, this comes from Anonymous. On side roads that diverge from the state road at an angle, can the gap in the rumble strips be made larger? The existing condition on Route 30 and Burbank Road is too narrow, so it is hard not to cross the rumble strip when turning left.
So thank you for that question. I guess if I'm understanding it correctly, you're talking about the gap. So you have Route 30, you have Burbank Road on the side, and there's a break in the rumble strips. And I guess you're saying, I think I'm understanding it as the break within the rumble strips is not long enough to provide a vehicle to turn without hitting the rumble strips accidentally. I'm hoping I'm getting that right. So the standard installation practice for when this does go in is, I believe it's supposed to be, if you're extending the side street at whatever the angle of the side street is, you're essentially extending it into, in this case, Route 30. It's supposed to be installed, I believe, 25 feet back from that extension line. If you just imagine it being extended 25 feet back in each direction, so that that doesn't happen. So, I'm not entirely sure when the Route 30 section was installed. I believe it's been there for at least a few years. And our spec, or the specification for installing these, has somewhat changed a little bit in the last few years. But that is the general practice for this. So really, when vehicles are turning, they should have a buffer from a town road so that they don't, accidentally hit the rumble strips to cause the noise.
So just in case anybody's joining us a little bit on the later side, I want to remind you how you can ask questions. For those on YouTube, the information can be found under the video. You just need to click See More, and then the email address should be there for you to copy and paste. It is not a hyperlink, so you will need to copy and paste. For those in chat, you can post your question in the Teams live event chat, where you have the option to ask a question anonymously. For everyone else, please contact us by email at dotproject171-478stafford@ct.gov, or by phone at 860-944-1111, where you can leave a message with your question. And again, I want to remind you and encourage everyone to participate in the brief survey at the link displayed on the screen. It's also on YouTube, and it is located at the bottom of the project webpage. Check to see if we have questions. And also wanted to remind, if you are just joining in too, that the public comment period for this presentation is open for 2 weeks through July 28th, and we will be reviewing all voicemails and emails within that time frame. However, the live chat option is only available during this live event today. I do see we have a couple more questions. How long will the project take?
Thank you for that question also. As I kind of touched on a little bit earlier during your presentation, let me see if I could actually pull up that slide real quick. I guess this doesn't mention the speed, but so the construction crews, once they mobilize, they typically travel at a speed of 2 to 3 miles per hour. They do the work during non-commute hours, non-peak hours. And so these two segments that are combined for a little over 1.3 miles, if they're traveling at 2-3 miles an hour, I mean, they'll knock this out in a couple of hours, in probably a day. And so once the new pavement is installed, this is a short process to put into Centerline Rumble Strips, and it is not anticipated to impact commute times or lead to any sort of major delays or anything like that.
And that is specifically for the Centerline Rumble Strips. Just want to ensure that there's no confusion with the actual paving of the roadway. That may take a little bit longer, and that is a separate activity. Once the roadway is paved, the crew will then come back out in some time and start doing the Centerline Rumble Strips.
Right. Usually the road is paved, and then there's a little bit of a lull before the rumble strips are put in. But it's a moving operation, so there's no interference with traffic, like I said.
We did get a statement from Anonymous. Thanks for the info. Nice job.
Thank you, Anonymous.
Thanks, Anonymous.
Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone, for general information, if you joined late and couldn't hear the whole thing, just general information about this project, please visit the project webpage. It is portal.ct.gov/DOT Stafford 171-478. And after tonight, within a day or two, this presentation will be posted to the web page as well. Does not.
Hopefully we got all the questions. Hopefully we got all the, you know, any concerns or questions that folks may have had. Hopefully we assuaged it a bit. But yeah, any more questions? You know, feel free to let us know. Like I said, there is a 2-week comment period after this, also by phone or email. So. Looks like we have one more of a statement than a question.
Oh, no, that was the... Resident west of Big Y, we look forward to new pavement. That alone means it will be quieter along Route 190. I agree. Thank you, resident west of Big Y. And a smoother ride. Yep.
If this happens to be the motorcyclist, yeah, I've driven up to Stafford on my bike. This will be nicer.
I'd just like to do a reminder for those on YouTube and anyone who called in how they can ask questions. For those on YouTube, the information can be found under the video. You need to click See More, and the email address should be there for you to copy and paste. It is not a hyperlink, so you will need to copy and paste this. For those in chat, you can post your question in the Teams live event chat, where you have the option to ask a question anonymously. And for everyone else, please contact us by email at dotproject171-478stafford@ct.gov or by phone at 860-944-1111, where you can leave a message with your question. I want to remind and encourage everyone to participate in the brief survey at the link displayed on the screen on YouTube, and is also located at the bottom of the project webpage.
Mm-hmm. Looks like we may have one more comment.
Taking a second to load on my end.
Let's change the format. I'll read this one.
Okay, sure.
We got a voicemail question. This is Art Gary, I believe. We got a question from him earlier. Has a general comment that the format of the questioning in this manner in the meeting is inadequate, and he is going to send us a written feedback later.
Thank you, Art Gary. Apologize for the format of this. Unfortunately, this is the mechanism we have at the moment due to what's going on, with the COVID and pandemic. Virtual is the way we are doing it. We eventually will be going back to in person at some point, and we do welcome your feedback. So we're always open to making changes, adjusting as we go along. So definitely send in something for us, and we will try to adjust. Thank you.
Right, and feel free to let us know in the feedback survey. Also, like I said, we do use that to try and improve these going forward. So, any feedback we'll take. Thank you.
Okay, and then just another reminder for everyone that the public comment period for this presentation is open through July 28th, 2 weeks, and we will be reviewing all voicemails and emails within that time frame. However, the live chat is only available during this live event. So at this time, we'd like to, seeing no more questions in the chat, we would like to thank you all for joining us. Did you have another question?
Oh no, I'm just. Looks like it. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet.
Thank you all for joining us this evening, and I want to remind that you can send us a question via email at dotproject171-478stafford@ct.gov, or by phone at 860-944-1111. And feel free to visit our project website at portal.ct.gov/DOT Stafford 171-478, where you can find a copy of tonight's presentation, copies of the plans, and a link to a brief survey that we encourage everyone to fill out. Thank you once again for your time, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for the questions, and have a good night.